Internet, my name is Ren. This is Rants, a channel where I rant about everything from pop culture to politics. In this video, we are going to celebrate the fact that we finally made it. We made it to the end of Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery with Season 1, Episode 15, Will You Take My Hand? Which means this is going to be the last Discovery review for this season, and boy was this a wild ride. The beginning of the season was very, very bumpy, and then I thought there was some good stuff towards the middle of the season, and then the end of the season was just an absolute mess. I am so glad that none of my predictions for this episode came true. I'm really glad there was no temporal bullshit nonsense. I'm glad that when they talked about bringing Culber back, they were doing so in more of a metaphorical way with the whole micellar network as opposed to actually bringing him back to life somehow. And I have to say that this episode was much, much more subdued than I was expecting a season finale of this show to be. And I think parts of it also felt the most Star Trek of any of the episodes so far. Don't get me wrong, it was still really flawed and had so many problems, but I think this was one of the best episodes so far, if not the best, in terms of finally giving us some real characterization and some real engagement with their tone. I think in a way that made the story a little more interesting for once and made me actually care about the characters, you know, at all. At all. So this episode begins with Emperor Georgiou on the bridge. She's completely unconvincing as Captain Georgiou because she's obviously an evil Terran, and they've just spent time in the Terran Empire. The entire crew was aware of the existence of the mirror universe, and I don't know how literally everyone does not immediately conclude that she's a mirror universe imposter, because it's so obvious. She talks about how the Klingons are dirt and we shouldn't call their planet a homeworld, only Kronos. And then she makes a bunch of weird allusions to cannibalism to Saru, talking about fear making Kelpians tough, and Saru shoots back that she'd find him unpalatable. And then Michael does this weird thing where she tries to expose her as a fraud by asking her questions about her childhood, but it's a very general question, like, where did you grow up? Which I feel like would either be the same in both universes or would have been readily available in Captain Georgiou's personnel file, which I'm sure Emperor Georgiou took a look at. Although I don't know how close a look she took at it, because she does not even try to not seem evil. Like, she's so obviously evil. So obviously evil. I don't know why they bothered with the imposter plot. I think it's just because they wanted her more involved in the story, and that was the only way they could think of to do it. It just feels very weird and contrived. So of course there's some tension between Burnham and Georgiou. Georgiou and Burnham go down to try and get information out of L'Rell, and Georgiou starts just beating the hell out of her to try and figure out what part of the planet they should land on to plan its imminent destruction from. And so of course L'Rell's obviously uncooperative and has no incentive to cooperate because you're already beating the crap out of her. And you're trying to destroy her homeworld, and like, Klingons I guess have at least some honor in this incarnation of Star Trek, so I don't think she would sell out her homeworld to not be beaten up by a tiny human. But okay. And then they immediately just decide to go ask Ash for the information, because he has all Vox memories, and it seems like that should have maybe occurred to them before the beating, but alright. So then they go ask Ash Vox, and he immediately just tells them what to do, and then they come out in these hilarious leather costumes that just, I literally laughed out loud when they were walking down in the hallway in them. Like, Georgiou is wearing this like weird like latex looking leathery bondage outfit. I'm loving the vibes they went for. They just went for it. It was really funny, and it just cracked me up. And so then they teleport down to a Klingon debauchery town, basically, where anything goes. And they split up to gather information. Georgiou goes and patronizes a couple of prostitutes and has a three-way with a male and female prostitute who don't want to charge her because of how she's just so good and all the cool Terran tricks she taught them. Whenever they do stuff like that, I'm always just like, what is it that she taught you that you didn't already know? You're prostitutes. Like, you have sex for a living. What didn't you already know how to do? And while she's doing that, Vok and Burnham go off, and Vok gambles, and then Burnham is the one with PTSD, when the Klingons are laughing, and they kind of remind her of the death of her parents, and we finally get sort of the story, the actual story of the death of her parents, which she blames herself for because they were only on the planet when the Klingons attacked because she asked her family to postpone a vacation so she could see a supernova. And that was some really good character development for Michael, and explains why she internalizes every bad thing that she's a part of and tends to blame herself and sort of, you know, guilt herself forever. And so that was kind of an interesting character moment, and it was a nice way to redevelop her relationship with Ashvok. I don't even know what to call him now, to be honest. So while they're doing that, Tilly gets high. Of course she does, and she swears again, that potty mouth. And she swears because she discovers that what they thought was a drone they were going to use to map the planet so that they could attack it later is actually a bomb that's designed to destroy the entire planet. And so she, of course, alerts Michael to the plan, and while she's in the process of doing said alerting, Georgiou comes and just palm heels her in the fucking face. And Michael, of course, springs into action and goes up to Discovery to plead with Admiral Cornwell to not do the genocides. And she makes a really impassioned speech about how this isn't Starfleet, this isn't what Starfleet does, and how they wouldn't have tried to hide it if they didn't know it was wrong. And she eventually convinces Cornwell, ultimately by getting the entire crew of Discovery to mutiny. And I did actually like the idea that the war was started with a mutiny and in a way ended with a mutiny. I thought that was a good way for Michael's character to kind of come full circle. And so, you know, they're easily talked out of their evil plan. And so then she goes down to the surface, and Georgiou is in the volcano where she has dropped the bomb and she has the detonator and she's about to destroy the planet, and Burnham just talks to her for like a minute, just talks her out of it, it's fine. Basically just says, oh, you either give me that detonator or you kill me, and also the Federation will hunt you down, or you just give me the detonator and you're free. And so Georgiou just gives her the detonator and then pieces out. Okay. So then they decide that since they have the Klingon planet hostage at this point, they decide they're going to give the detonator to L'Rell so that she can unite the Klingons and convince them to stop fighting this war. So I'm glad that they wrap up this plotline quickly, because they do. It's very quick. They give her the thing, she goes and she threatens the Klingons with it, and then they immediately acquiesce. It's very, very easy. And here's the thing. So they made a big deal of explaining that this war doesn't end until humans have been demolished. I don't really understand how or why they would be entirely convinced by an agenda of not killing all the humans, or why L'Rell would really be incentivized to not continue killing humans for political popularity even after uniting all the Klingons with a bomb threat. I guess we're just kind of granting that she's become so fond of her captors she wouldn't do that, even though Georgiou literally just beat the shit out of her a few scenes back. But okay, whatever. As long as the Klingon War is over, I don't care. I don't care. So Ash also decides to peace out because reasons, I guess. And there's a really tearful goodbye between him and Burnham, and it's kind of sweet. And then he wanders off with L'Rell to go help unite the Klingon Empire, I guess. And then medals! We get a medals scene where Stamets and Burnham and Saru and Scarhead Girl, see, Detmer, is that her name, Detmer? And Culber is honored posthumously, and it's just a real feel-good scene. We get a speech about who we are as Starfleet from Michael Burnham that, again, feels pretty Star Trek and kind of made me like her a little bit more as a character. And I started to have some kind of goodwill towards this episode, as much as this plot required a lot of suspension of disbelief. And then, at the end of the episode, they are flying Discovery back to Vulcan to pick up a new captain. And on the way there, They're intercepted by a distress call. From who else but Captain Pike of the USS Enterprise! Dun dun dun! And that was the end of the episode. So close. So close. But they just had to make it a thing because they were afraid people wouldn't come back and watch. Not unreasonably. So all in all, this episode was pretty okay. I think that it actually had a lot of room for the characters to really breathe and interact with each other, and they did a good job playing Tilly off of different elements so that her humor was a little better, and I think that they did a particularly good job making Burnham a more sympathetic character than she has been, and I think they added some much needed explanation and depth to explain why she is the way she is. Sorry about all the throat clearing, I have a bit of a cold. And ultimately I think that that paid off pretty well. I guess they kind of made the Ash plot come to a good resting place in the story. I'm sure we'll see more of him, and there will be all the romantic tension whenever they're interacting in episodes. I think in Season 2 we're definitely going to see what happened to Prime Universe Lorca, because I think the throwaway line about how he could never survive in the Terran Empire is obviously bullshit. Of course no one believes that. Of course he's just going to show up somehow. And I am interested to see how they play that versus Imposter Lorca. I think that hopefully Georgiou is going to be a recurring villain. I would like for her to get into some shenanigans and cause trouble. That would be really fun. And I just really hope that Enterprise has a very small role in Season 2. I hope it's not a big part of the story, because I really don't want it to be. I really don't want it to be. There's just so much wrong so far with what's been done that I'm worried when they keep trying to shoehorn things in to make it more canon, it all ultimately makes it feel more disjointed. I think they put themselves in the prequel box, they obviously regret putting themselves in the prequel box, and now they're trying to make all of their prequel nonsense make sense, and it's just going to get messy. But this episode gave me a little bit of hope for Season 2. I really hope they get better at more Star Trek kind of tone, even if they do make it more serialized. I don't have my hopes up too high, but I'll check out Season 2. Alright, well that is my thoughts on the final episode of Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. If you like my videos, subscribe. If you don't like them, I am positive you'll tell me. See you next time. Wiedersehen.